Athreyan. She is a content writer by profession and has been writing for and managing documentation and learning content for technology products and organizations for over 3 decades. With a passion for writing, she has written and authored short stories and poems that have been published on websites and literary groups. Spiritual by nature, she is a believer in self awareness and in the constant evolution of the self. She also believes firmly in lifelong learning and in the goodness of humankind. Touch and Go is her debut publication that mirrors these beliefs and values and her philosophy in life. So, Miss Gayatri, I would like to cordially welcome you today.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Yes, and up next we have Miss Saras Manickman. Her debut collection of short stories is called My Mother Pattu, which was published in 2003. The titular story won the regional prize for Asia in the 2019 Commonwealth Short Story Contest. In 2021, it was included in the anthology The Art and Craft of Asian Stories, published by Bloomsbury, and in 2022, it was published in the Best of Malaysian Short Fiction in English 2010 to 2020. She has worked as a teacher, teacher trainer, copywriter, business English trainer, copy editor, and writer of textbooks, school workbooks, and coffee table books. Her various work experiences enabled insights into characters and life experiences, shaping the authenticity which marks her stories. So yeah, I would also like to cordially welcome you, ma'am, to today's session.
Just to tell you, the book was published in a few months ago. No, it's 2023.
Oh, I think there has been a typo over here. It says 2003. Yeah. My bad. Yeah. Right. So that is the. So those are the two panelists for our session today. And now we can move on to the questions. So my first question to both of you is, mental health is a significant theme in literature reflecting the complexities of the human mind. How do your works explore and contribute to its understanding, and what motivated you to delve into this subject? Ms. Saras, if you want to go first, you can start.
Okay. I never thought of it as talking about mental illness. I write a story that I need to write. It's not about writing specifically about a theme or writing to a specific reader or audience. I talked about Alzheimer's or mental, and then in another story about mental illness, simply because it came into the story. In that sense, I'm not sure. There was no purpose in delay. There's no target. You know, I didn't want to create. I didn't want to prove a point. I didn't want to explore this. I just wanted to talk about people. And if one of them happened to have mental illness, fair enough. The only thing in my mind was to treat that person with authenticity, with respect, and so on. It wasn't like I was trying to prove a point. And I talked about them as if they were just like talking about ordinary people, you and me, about anybody else. That they had a mental illness was part of their story. I was not going to point it out, you know. Yeah. I don't have this purpose. I'm a hopelessly purposeless person. You know, it's just writing a story that spoke to me, and in writing it as honestly as possible or as authentically as possible, I hoped that it would speak to the readers. You know.
Miss Gayatri?
I think that's something I probably share in common with Ms. Saras. When I wrote,
just call me Saras.
Okay, Saras. When I wrote my debut book, the idea was the same. Mine is something like a collection of memoirs. It is more about people and incidents in life that have touched me, have taught me something along the way. That's what my book is all about. So like Sarah said, I too haven't specifically focused on mental health as a theme. However, looking back, I do see that several of my stories touch upon mental wellness in some way or the other. For example, there is one story about a family that lived close to us who had undergone some trauma, and who were victimized, by society, um, and they were ostracized by society, and they went through that kind of a depression, and how they sailed through it, and then when my family faced a similar tragedy, how they came through for us. So they had learned from their own experiences, and that translated into the hope that they could give my family. So that was one. I did touch upon the depression that I went through, and some of my family went through when tragedy struck and I lost my dad. There are a couple of chapters which dwell upon that traumatic experience, and how I kind of went into a cocoon, isolated everyone, including my mother, and what incidents in life made me change that and come out, and come out of the trauma, come out of that depression. So subtly touched upon that. There's also one anecdote that I have written about, which tackles this topic head on, I would say, while all others were just subtle references to mental wellness, depression, trauma, getting over it. One anecdote in my book actually talks about how I had seen a madman on a railway platform, and I had got scared, and how a co-passenger actually told me, uh, there's no need to get scared of this person because he's another human being like you, just that probably he's on a different plane. So how you look at, and this is, of course, when I was a kid, not when I was an adult. So it just teaches you how to uh, you know look at them as human beings, just like Saras said. I mean, they're no different. It's just that you have some kind of illness, they have another. So yeah, some aspects of my book, I think, do touch upon it subtly. One of them a little more heads on, but all of them have that common thread of the message of hope. How do you get over it, and how do you get on with life with hope?
Yeah, and since you talk about the personal aspect of your stories, how it has been drawn from personal experiences, I would like to ask the next question that goes, many authors draw inspiration from personal experiences. So can you share how your personal journeys or those of people around you influence your portrayal of mental health in your respective works? So Miss Saras, if you would like to go ahead.
Oh, just call me Saras. Okay, again, I wasn't trying to show anything. In my stories, I write about people who are interesting, who have a story to say. And if they have some mental issues, it comes out, but it's not, it's part of the story. And that whole issue is treated with authenticity. I won't say with respect, because respect means there's a division between you and the reader and whatever. It is just a story about people, and I would respect them as much as I respect you or respect myself. And they have a story to share, and I'm the conduit, the channel, who tells you their story. It's never about my story. But having said that, if I had written the stories, I'm a sloth. Take a very, very long time to write a story. And the person who writes the story at the beginning, that person who I was, would have finished the story in a different way. Because when I was younger, I was very full of myself. I was very sure of the answers. I knew what it was all about. I had the answers. This person is supposed to behave this way. That person is supposed to behave this way. It was through life, through, as you know, through living and loss and grief and loving and losing, that you learn to soften your shell and to be more receptive of people. And you learn to be more compassionate, and you tell your characters stories because those stories are important. You don't tell them, you let them tell their stories. I think it's very important. I am only the channel or the conduit. The characters tell their stories, which they need to share with the world. And I let the world, the reader, decide how they're going to take that story. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Miss Gayatri?
Makes absolute sense. I mean, I couldn't have said it better, Saras. But just to add to what Saras said, for me too, first of all, my book is all about personal experiences. And the reason I chose to write about personal experiences is, like Saras rightly said, you are just being the conduit and telling the story, but when you're telling it from your own personal experiences about people that you've met and incidents or anecdotes that have happened to you, and when you have seen these people at close quarters and interacted with them, I think there is a level of authenticity in the story, and that lends itself better to the storytelling itself. You're not writing from imagination, you're not writing from hearsay. You've been there, you've seen that, you've experienced it, and therefore the compassion, the empathy, and those other feelings that Sarah spoke about, they shine through. And I feel when you're writing authentically, and when you're writing with those authentic feelings, the story has a lot more to convey. And I feel the reader will probably relate to it and understand the whole concept of mental wellness much better when it's coming from a place of authenticity.
Yeah, to add on to that, it's like your story is not to show how clever you are as a writer.
Yep.
The moment you start putting yourself in there and say, oh, look at me, I'm such a clever writer, I can do this, I can do that, your story falls spectacularly flat. It's not you, it's not about you, it's about the characters and their stories. No?
Absolutely. I agree.
And I think that is also the beauty of both of your stories, and that is how the hope aspect of all of it comes to shine through so well because of their authenticity.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we can move on to the next question. And that goes, in what ways do you think literature can contribute to breaking the stigmas and foster a better understanding of mental health in society? Um, who would like to go first?
Gayatri, you start.
Okay. So here is what I think. I think in literature, in books, we have been reading about mental health for a very long time. So because if you actually look back and see, some of the classics have also spoken about mental health. You have books like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or Girl Interrupted, the books that have been centered around mental institutions, talking about mental illness in a very in your face kind of manner. But um, and over the years also, that there are classics, there is popular fiction. You have various facets of mental illness that have been explored. You have characters with multiple personality disorders. I've read quite a few books with multiple personality disorders, and borderline personality disorders, things like that. Where I feel literature has changed over the years, and today where it's making more of an impact, is two things. One, today, if you pick up any book in the market, see, earlier I only spoke about a few names, and those were the books that dealt with mental illness, but you knew you were dealing with mental illness. The book, the backstory talks about it. It says it's about mental illness. It says about its. Today, if you go to any bookshop or go online, pick any book, and I buy quite a few books, almost like 6, 7 a month. In every book, there will be one character, one aspect which deals with mental, illness. It could be various forms, and over the years, I think we are looking at finer nuances of mental illness. It's not. It doesn't have to be OCD. It doesn't have to be personality disorder. It doesn't have to be insanity. It could be just anxiety. It could be getting panic attacks. It could be PTSD. Somebody's lost someone and then going through that trauma and unable to come out of it. They are subtler forms and nuances of mental illness are coming out in books today, and it's everywhere. It's in all the books we read. It's in all the maybe in the movies we see. And I feel it's because of two things. One, there is a greater awareness of mental health and mental wellness. And I think people are realizing it's okay to talk about these things. There was a time when it wasn't okay. There were times when people would say, if I say this, people would label me insane or mad. Today, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to say, I'm having an anxiety attack. I'm going through depression. I'm feeling low today, or I'm seeing a counselor. I'm seeing a therapist. These have become okay, and I think a large part of it is also because it's everywhere around us. We read about it. There are so many characters in books that talk about it, and I think it lends itself to that kind of awareness and therefore leading us towards hope.
Maybe at this point, we need to talk about defining mental health. It's kind of crucial because mental health versus mental illness, kind of different things. One still has a connotation, of this uncomfortable connotation. Whereas mental health, as you said, Gayatri, it covers a whole range of things. I did have not zeroed in on mental health in my stories, but I have talked about rage as the lack of fulfillment, the lack of agency, the lack of satisfaction, and that comes out as rage, that comes out as a kind of mental issue. And I also talked about Alzheimer's, and what I did without deliberately, without being so clever, I just gave them a human voice, a normal, ordinary voice of anyone that you would meet on the streets, or would be your neighbor or your boss or your mom. I just did that, gave them normalcy within a societal context, and also tried to point out the cruelty, societal expectations that create enormous pressure. I'm not sure whether you would define Alzheimer's as mental health, as a mental health issue. Would you? I'm not sure. Would you, Gayatri? Is Alzheimer's a mental health issue?
It is. It is, because it is an illness that affects the mind. And it affects the life of not just the person suffering from it, but also the people around. So in a way, it does form into the realm of mental illness.
So they didn't talk about it as an issue in itself. Talked about it within a story where the societal treatment of these women helped to create mental health issues. And in that sense, the indictment is on the society, and where these women were constantly trying to make them ordinary folks. It could happen to anybody, It could be your neighbor, it could be a boss, it could be anybody, it could be a man on the street. Just give them a voice. I don't know whether I'm really answering your question or not. Nashkan, I really don't know, because I never thought of writing to that end of mental illness or whatever. I talked mainly about women without agency. A woman, for instance, in one of the stories here, a woman becomes a widow at 30 or 31, and society denies her any personal life. She shouldn't have a sexual life. She shouldn't have a self-fulfilling life. She should live for her children. What the heck? She's not even a person anymore. So ultimately, she does get Alzheimer's, and she goes into a dream world. Or another woman who is so bright and intelligent and brilliant, and the father gets her married because they're so scared of societal things. Education frightens the old people. Or another woman who is so determined to push her children to academically that she's in a rage because in the end the children prefer the father to her. So those were my stories. I wasn't deliberately trying to maneuver mental health, So I feel like a fraud actually here.
No, I think contrary to what you're thinking, I think at least, sorry, I haven't read your book, but based on what you just told me,
It's
and
brilliant. Read it.
I will. But based on just what you outlined of these three stories, I think definitely it touches on mental wellness. It's not mental illness per se, maybe.
Yeah.
It definitely
Good. That word is
it does
good.
touch on mental wellness and mental health. Absolutely.
Right. Yes.
I think I would have to agree with Miss Gayatri on this, because even if we don't talk about mental illness per se, the topic of mental health has become so common these days, and even in the stories, if it's not directly mentioned, the aspects of it still do shine through very well.
Yeah.
Yes. So when we talk about the topic of mental health, I think one thing that we cannot let go of, or that does need to be talked about is culture. So my next question is that mental health is often perceived differently across cultures. So how does your cultural background influence the way mental health is depicted in your narratives? And do you aim to bring cultural nuances to the forefront?
Let me start.
Sure.
I think you got to call it by its name. Our culture, our culture, as I see it, I got to frame that. As I see it, denies women an agency, denies them an authentic voice. Um, a woman can be loved and adored and by her husband or by the family, but if she doesn't have any agency in choosing, making her own decisions, then she has no agency. The culture doesn't allow her that. The culture tells her a widow must behave this way. Culture says we girl children must listen to the father, or the mother, and get married, regardless of whether you're a brilliant person or not. And then when you get married, you must listen to your husband, and you must pack up your dreams and put them away. So yeah, I'm calling out the culture without calling out the culture, just pointing it out. Say this is the kind of world that these women live in. Yeah.
Yeah. In my book, particularly, maybe I haven't correlated these two. I haven't touched upon so much about mental health in the context of culture. I think I'm just trying to think if any of them touch upon it. But I agree with what Sarah just said, that definitely our culture and the cultural nuances that it brings in has a bearing on our treatment of this entire topic. That we've been brought up, our the traditional culture that we have, perhaps doesn't allow us to be so open about this topic, about these aspects, and especially, like Sarah said, especially when it comes to certain genders, certain section of the society, maybe it's a little bit more. So definitely that cultural nuance is there, and probably it's changing. I don't know, but if you look at and these stories, both Saras's and mine, are probably over the years we have collected and written about them. Definitely, I'm sure you can see that the culture has a bearing on the way we have treated some of these stories.
Yes, and I think even the fact that this literature has evolved so much over the years and the way these stories are presented, that's also a very big factor which reflects that the culture is changing and it
Absolutely.
will keep changing.
Yeah.
Right. So then I think we can move on to the next question, and that goes, literature has the power to impact readers profoundly. So how do you envision your work influencing the reader's perspective on the topic of mental health and hope? And what kind of conversations do you hope that your stories will initiate?
I could go first.
Mm.
Maybe not mental health, mental wellness per se, but definitely I can say 100% my stories are aimed towards that message of hope that we just spoke about. All my stories are meant to tell the reader that you don't have to wait for an epiphany. It's not going to be taught in a classroom. It's not going to only come from a guru. Every small incident in your life, every small encounter, even with a stranger on the street, can can teach you something, can bring in some positivity into your life, and it's up to you to pick it up and learn and move with it. And every story of mine ends with that message of hope and learning and the positive energy. So that's what my entire book is about, and that's what I wanted to leave the reader with. Also, my motivation of writing this book was, while I've chronicled my life incidents and put it together as a form of these stories, the idea is to ignite that thought in the reader's head to start thinking about, okay, what are those things in my life that have taught me something? Who are those people in my life who are bringing a positive influence? What can I learn from each person, and how can I get a more positive and energetic outlook towards life? That's what I want to leave readers with. And yeah, my book, I would say, definitely brings in that beacon of hope.
I am absolutely nowhere. um, I wrote this collection of stories, or rather, this collection came together because I happened to win this Commonwealth Prize in 2019, for the Asian region. Now, when I won it, I realized a lot of people had helped me in my writing life, my creative writing coaches in Malaysia and abroad. And I needed to honor them. Now, instead of just playing the fool with stories and tinkering with them and being a dilettante, I needed to come up with something strong and positive. This had to be something positive to honor them. So I collected all my stories and wrote fresh ones, and that is how the stories came about. And I found that when I started writing, to prove how clever I am or how brilliant I am, it never worked. It just never worked at all. Um, it was it was it was only when I started honoring the characters' spaces and their voices that the stories worked. And if they worked and they talked about mental health and mental well-being uh, in the process, fine. But I also talked beyond mental wellness, talked about patriarchy and feminism, the lack of agency, this racial discrimination, and and those were things that required courage on my part, because I'm actually a scaredy cat. I I don't have courage, but to come up and write them on the page and put your name there required some courage. And I thought, if I call myself a writer, I jolly well should behave like a writer. That means put my name there, talk about um, issues that affect all of us. And that's how the book came about. And basically just calling out these issues by name. But I stopped. I stopped short of being judgmental, because that's not my place. I'm not giving you a moral book. I'm giving you stories about real life. You take what you want from it based on your capacity. And if I can help, initiate conversations about mental wellness, about patriarchy, about racial discrimination, about calling people names, feminism, lack of agency, well and good. And I think it's because I kept myself at the back and made the stories speak for themselves. Those stories connected with a number of readers. Yeah.
That's really nice to hear, actually. Yeah, so those are the questions that I had for both of you, and now I have one question each for like each person separately. And yeah, if the other person wants to go ahead and add something to the questions, they're free and welcome to do so. So yeah, I think I'll start with Miss Saras first, and yeah, my question to you goes, the racial dynamics explored in your stories, particularly in Malaysia, add a layer of complexity to the narratives. How do you balance authenticity and storytelling when addressing issues of race and privilege?
Okay. When it comes to race, it's so very easy to go on the line of victimhood, to whine, and to look at us, we're victims, nobody respects us, nobody cares about us, our rights are not recognized, etc. It's so easy. What I wanted to, and that wasn't what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk, let's say we talk about racism, talk about racial discrimination. What I wanted to say is it worked both sides. As much as you talk about people being racist to you, are you racist to them? You know, there is a section in one of the last stories where you know the Indians are called racial slurs and feeling just really very rude, and then they're very upset. And then the mother of this girl, in one episode, she says the father brings in factory workers to give them lunch at home, and the mother is outraged. She says, "What will I serve them with? What is their religion? What is their caste? I mean, who is a racist? You know." So, and I needed that fairness, so that the racist is also a victim of racial discrimination. The abuser is also abused. The perpetrator is also a victim. I needed to show this wholeness. Otherwise, I'll just be writing to the gallery, you know, and making some sections of people very happy. And I was not interested in that. And where did I get these ideas? You know, it's like you open a newspaper and you get, all the stories are there. And I just gave those stories a fictional voice.
That is actually a very interesting way to look at it. Ms. Gayatri, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, not that I'd like to add, but I really appreciated what Saras just said about who is a racist, right? I mean, you keep yelling from the rooftops that you're the victim, but aren't you doing the same to the other person as well? You know,
Exactly.
it's a very subtle line, and it needs a lot of self-awareness and introspection to go and say, if you think they're being unfair, aren't you being unfair on some plane as well? I mean,
Right.
yeah, I think that's a very, very profound thought, actually. That's very profound.
The genius in the writers.
I think being a writer, you need to have that honesty about your work when you approach your work. Otherwise you might as well write a bestseller. You know, we should bring you a lot of money and make you very happy, but you know, you're playing to the gallery again.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. I mean, money is nice. I hope Patu sells so that I can get lots of money, but you know, I'm not holding out any great hope.
True. Very true.
Yes. So moving on to the next and last question for today, my question to Miss Gayatri, and it goes, Touch and Go reflects your philosophy on life. How does the collection of stories serve as a medium to convey your belief about self-awareness, lifelong learning, and the goodness of humankind? Also, can you share how the anecdotes in this book aim to inspire and teach, especially in the context of mental well-being?
Yeah. So like you rightly summed up, right? I mean, it's my firm belief, and that's the motto I live by. That one, I believe in the goodness of humankind. I strongly believe everyone has good. Sometimes that doesn't go well with everyone around me, including my family, but that's a philosophy I firmly believe in, that there is good in everyone. It's up to you to actually look for that good and take it away. It's easy to look for bad in people. You know, it's tougher to actually look for the good. Um, and I also believe very firmly that everybody who passes through your life, it could be people you know, it could be strangers who are just passing through the night. They are there for a purpose. I firmly believe everything in life happens for a purpose. Everyone comes into your life for a purpose. Now it's easy for you to miss that purpose if you're not looking for it, and that's where self-awareness comes in. You know, it's what self-awareness. Self-awareness is when you're completely aware of yourself, including your faults. And there I allude to what Saras just said, right? I mean, um, when you're a writer and you have to write with from that sense of place of honesty. And when you're saying you're being honest, you have to be honest with yourself first. And if you read my in my book, that's what I've done. Every book of mine, in fact, I was playfully telling my daughter the other day that if you see, every story of mine actually puts me in a bad light, because I'm exploring what was not so good in me and how somebody came in and taught me to be better, you know. And through every chapter, how I'm getting better because I'm addressing those flaws in myself. And that again comes from a place of self-awareness. You have to recognize what's not so great about yourself, acknowledge it, and be willing to change. And when you cross those barriers, then you look to see, okay, how can I change? Who can teach me to change? And that's when these people in your life, the incidents in your life, will start making sense. Otherwise, you'll just pass through life, meeting people, greeting people, and think you have nothing to learn from them. But that's what I want to address through this book. So like I said, I firmly believe in that, and I do believe that, and my learning hasn't stopped. If you look at my book, I'd say this is not the end. The last page says this is not the end, because learning, it's a lifelong journey. Even today, I learned a lot from Saras just now, just on this call. So so it is about being aware of yourself, being open to learning, being open to people, and constantly looking for ways in which you can improve yourself. That's the first part of your question. Second part of your question, like I said, yes, the idea of writing this book was, if I can chronicle this and say this is how people in my life have taught me. So, for example, I've written about a taxi driver, from whom I learned something. So maybe next time a reader of mine is going in a cab, will probably think, okay, I read this book, so probably I can learn from this person now, from my servant maid. I've written a couple of stories about how I learned something from the lady working in my house. Um, so I just want to open people's mind to, everyone has something good to share. You can learn from them. Are we doing that? Are we opening our minds? That is one aspect. And on the mental wellness, like I told you, there are a few stories where I've touched upon loss, pain, trauma, going through depression after that, and what what trauma does that depression cause, and how do you get out of it? And it's not some great earth-shattering thing. I mean, there are small things that you can do to you come out of that shell. you know there is a story I wrote about, an anecdote I wrote about, when I lost my father, and how I kind of went into a shell, and I was even isolating my mother, and I didn't realize how much it was paining her. So she went through the trauma of not just losing her husband, but also having her daughter isolate her. And then and it took a chance conversation or some incident with my neighbor and family to make me understand that, this is not what I should be doing, and this is how I should come through for the other person who's also grieving. When you're grieving, and both of you are grieving, you need to be there for each other. So there are simple incidents, simple things in life that we can do to overcome these barriers to our mental wellness. So I hope many of these stories, like I said, in some it is probably very subtle, but if you're self-aware, if you're keeping an open mind and reading it, you'll probably pick up those nuances and say, okay, this is how I can um, get on, from this phase, from a low phase, and move on towards hope. That's what I hope my book will do.
I think it just means people are complicated. Yeah, we are all complicated, and there's so many facets to our characters, and I think it's our journey towards understanding begins when we say, I'm going to be honest about myself, about others, and not going to turn away from all the challenges. I'm going to look at them in the face and acknowledge my own complicity in them. At least I think that's how I write. I have no idea.
Yeah. So yes, those are all the questions that we have for both of you today. And I think today was yes.
Have you read the stories, our stories?
I did not get a chance to read them, but actually I'm really intrigued to read them now. I'll definitely be going back and reading both of the stories, both of your books.
Thank you so much.
Give
and I will definitely read
gifts. I want to read yours too. Gayatri, yours is available in India in any bookshop?
No, it's available on Amazon.com. Internationally as well.
No, I'm coming to India for some literature festivals.
Yeah.
So pick them up because
it is available on Amazon, Flipkart. Yeah.
Because of the price difference, you see. Books are so expensive here, but I think they're really affordable in India. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I completely lost my train of thought.
We fuddled your brain.
You were just saying that was your last question for the day.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that was the last question for the day. And I think this was a lovely chapter in my lifelong learning journey today. I really learned a lot from both of you, the way you answered the questions and the way you frame certain things. I think that's going to stick with me for a while. And I'm going to go back and read both of your books now. And yeah, I would really like to thank both of you for being here today and for engaging in this lovely conversation. And yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure too. And I absolutely enjoyed talking to Saras.
And to you, all of you, both of you, definitely. I feel like we've known each other for ages.
Yeah, I mean, strangely. And I don't know whether you guys sorted us together because of some reason, but I'm just realizing that Saras and I are connecting to so many points as writers.
Absolutely.
Our thought processes are so much in sync. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And what happens, Maskan? What happens now with this? Do you edit it and put it on live?
Okay, so basically we'll be having the literature festival going live in the month of February. I think it is going to be alongside the New Delhi World Book Fair. So at that time, when the festival is going on, these sessions will be aired on some online source, some online channel. And yeah, they will be edited and posted over there in the month of February.
Cool.
Great. And are you both attending any of the lit fests in India? Kerala and Mathrubuni. I'm attending both of them. Will I be able to see you both?
I'm not too sure. I'll have to see. As of now, I've not planned to attend any. Yeah.
All right. How about you, Master?
I'll be there at PVLF. I'm not sure about the other ones though.
Which one? Which one?
So
Which one will you be there?
this one, like PVLF, the one under which the session is being organized.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'll connect with both of you on Facebook or something like that.
Absolutely.
Are you on Facebook?
Yes.
Oh, you have to connect with me. Yeah.
I don't use Facebook. I'm so sorry.
And you're the youngest among us, okay? Hello.
So because she is
Anyway,
the
thank you.
youngest, she probably uses Instagram, not Facebook.
I use Instagram.
Yeah, right.
Because my daughter
I am
tells
on
me that
Instagram.
Facebook is for oldies.
That explains it. I am on Instagram. I have no idea how to use it.
It's a difficult switch to make from Facebook, actually. It took me a while as well. But yeah, now I've stuck to Instagram.
Anyway, thank you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful. I enjoyed myself. Yeah. Thank you.